Okay, now I've quilted around all the trapunto that I've cut away, and I used a gold glide thread for this quilting. You can use a contrasting thread or a matching thread if you like. You can even use your lighter weight, your 50 or 60 weight thread to do your quilting. But I wanted the motifs to stand out a little bit more, so I've used a regular glide thread. I believe it's a 40 weight. It's a 3-ply poly thread, and it's shiny, so it looks really nice. And next I'm going to do the background filler, and that's what's going to make that trapunto pop. And I'm going to move around to the front of the machine, and then I'm going to show you my trapunto foot on the machine. Okay, right here is my regular foot. This is just a plain hopping foot. Nothing special about it. It isn't an open toe. It's closed all the way around. And this is the one that I use probably 95% of the time. Because I do a lot of ruler work, I need to have the toe closed. I don't want an open toe foot here. Now my trapunto foot is here. And this is from Gamble, and Gamble makes this foot, and I don't know about the other companies. I don't know if they make them or not. But it's a very tiny foot, as you can compare it to this one. It's very small. And this will get up really close into these areas where I want to do my trapunto, where I want to do my tiny stitching and my background fillers, and it will get in there really close. Now this one isn't good to use with rulers because there's no space here. If I pull here my handy versatile here, and I've got this on my plate here, and I try to get this ruler up against it. I can't get it up against the foot. It'll go up against this arm on the foot here. It won't get up against this part of it. So it doesn't work well for that, but it will work great for tiny background stitching that you want to use to raise up your trapunto. So I'm going to change my foot, and then I'm going to do some quilting and show you what I'm going to do for my filler. I wanted to show you a couple of background filler ideas for a trapunto project. This is a quilt that I made several years ago. This is called Inner Circle, and it was a competition piece, and I had done a couple of different background fillers in it. In here you can see that I did some tiny crosshatch. This is about an 1/8 inch wide, and in this section here I did just some curves. I think they call this the banana. It's just curves going back and forth. And then in this area here is McTavishing that I did in here and in this area here. And the rest of this is all trapunto. I used an 80-20 batting for the trapunto bat on this one. And it did not place, but it did show, and I was real pleased with it. It's made, the fabric is a cotton sateen, and cotton sateen can be challenging because it is kind of stretchy because of the weave in it. It's not a polyester thread or polyester or a knit. It is cotton, but just the weave in it makes it kind of stretchy, so that was a bit of a challenge. And then I want to show you here on the edge. See if we got this in the camera. This section here was a swirl pattern, and I can't remember what year I did this. It was label says 2010, so that was 7 years ago that I did this one. And quite frankly, I was kind of in a rush to complete this project, so I may have made some different choices if I had more time to do it. Also, in this area here is some micro stippling. So I did several different background fills in this one. Gives it extra texture. So I think on this current project I'm going to do McTavishing. That's one of my favorite background fills. I like the motion that it gives to the project. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see how it goes. I started the background fill in the center of the feathered wreath, and I'm using a really small McTavishing pattern in here. And you can see that hopping foot can get up real close to those drawn lines so that I can get into all those little crevices and get all of those areas quilted down really good. Now I am in stitch regulated mode here, but after I had quilted for a while I switched over to manual mode after I got the feel. As I had mentioned previously, it's been several years since I've done a Wholecloth Trapunto quilt, and I needed to get the feel of this design again. So I had it in stitch regulated mode and just kind of took my time and kind of got my rhythm back on this pattern here. Now there really isn't a trick to this. You just basically have to cover the background and get up as close to the cutaway area as you can without going over your stitching, your quilting area right there. You want to have all that background evenly quilted so none of it is standing out any more than the trapunto is. So this area here is almost done, and then I'll go to the rest of it. And there's the finished center of that feathered wreath. Okay, now I'm working on the area right outside the feather wreath and between the two trapuntoed areas, and also doing McTavishing in here. And I'm still in stitch regulated mode here. And I have my stitch length at 12 stitches per inch. And the thread I'm using is So Fine, and it's in color, I think it's 401, but it's the white thread. And I've got my tension adjusted again so that I have a good tension both on the front and the back. And one thing you may find, especially that I have found, is that when the tension is even on the front and the back, it's hard to tell which is the front and the back of your quilt once you're done if you're using the same thread on the top as well as in the bobbin. And that's good. That means you've done a good job with your tension. Background filler, the McTavishing that I'm doing right now, is very tiny. I know it's hard to see from this angle, but I'll show you a close-up in a little bit. But I think what you can see already is how that trapunto is popping up because the background filler is so dense. So that is the goal when you have trapunto, is you want that to stand out and you want the background to recede. So that's what this is doing, and the background filler is doing its job. And I'll keep working on it and show you more video of it in just a little bit. Okay, here is a section of all the background fill completely done, and you can see where the trapunto is popped up there in the background. Here's the quilt with all the background quilting done. That's all McTavishing in there, and I think it looks really good. It's been several years since I've done a whole cloth, so I was afraid that maybe I kind of lost my touch, but I think after a couple of minutes of working with it, it all started flowing really nice, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. So the next step is to soak it in cold water, and that will get out all the water-soluble marker. And then I will soak it in warm water, and that'll get rid of the water-soluble thread. And then after that I will block it, and then I will square it up, and then bind it, and it'll be done. And if you've never done anything with this dense of quilting in it before, you'll probably be surprised at how much this shrinks. And it shrunk about 1 inch, I believe, with all that quilting, and if not a little bit more, I'll have to measure it. But you can kind of see in the center from side to side how it has kind of an hourglass look, and that's from all the trapunto in the center of the quilt. The sides were stabilized with the clamps, but the top and the bottom were stabilized with my red snappers on the leaders, so that stayed a little bit more square than what the sides did. So that will be trimmed up so it'll be all square, and then I'll bind it and put a label on it and possibly a hanging sleeve on it so that it can be hung.